Do you struggle with keeping good employees? Have you ever wondered why those good employees don't stick around? In podcast number 13 of Leadership Unscripted, I will go through common stories I've experienced and some advice on how to avoid losing those good shop floor employees. So first off, number one, the long-term employees get frustrated with not having their frustrations resolved. So if you're a production manager, supervisor, a leader of production, I'm sure you've seen this before. You have some employees that have been there for 25 years, 30 years, and they're just getting extremely frustrated. And any employee in a company for a long time gets frustrated. And for whatever reason, whatever their frustrations are, perhaps there's frustration with other employees. There's various different reasons, but if you're starting to pick up on that, you need to sit that employee down. You need to really start writing down, and I've had to do it many times. I've had employees leave, even with having discussions. Sometimes employees frustrated with another employee in a different department that you don't manage, which can be difficult to deal with. But the first thing you need to do is you need to sit that employee down, listen to them, and you just write down some of the things that they're frustrated about. And at the end of that conversation, ask them, is there something that I could do to basically, help? Is there one thing? Forget about everything. Is there one thing I could do to help reduce your frustration a bit? Because if you take on too much stuff, it's just not going to happen. You know yourself, unless you're OCD, you're probably not going to do everything. So just ask, is there one thing of our whole discussion, is there one thing I could do that's within my control and easy to accomplish that would help you deal with your frustration? So if there's one thing you can do, well then, okay, whatever it is, write that down, put it next to your keyboard or your monitor so that you remember that. And perhaps it's something that you need to do every week. And maybe you put up a 12-week little checklist and you say, okay, this one issue, or it's anonymous, whatever, there, and you check it off every week because you're doing it, so that if you do it for 12 weeks consistently, then that might help that employee see that you're actually trying. So that's one method. Second issue, good employees get frustrated with other employees getting away with high absenteeism. So, in production, if you do any hiring, big issues are absenteeism, punctuality and absenteeism, attitude, and the technical aspect, or how well they do their job. If they make lots of mistakes. Those are sort of four things. You could be really technical. I know lots of people that are really technical. They have terrible attendance. I know guys that basically come to work 3 days, they're off 2 days. They come back for 2 weeks, no problem. They're off 3 days, come in for 2 days. Consistently, always different reasons. Lots of family members dying. I know people die, but it's, some people, there are a few people I've seen and that it seems like they've had the worst situation ever because they've had probably 20 people die within 3 years. All of their family's been wiped off the earth. Maybe it's true. I don't know. Maybe there are some people that have bad situations, but I know factually that there are some people that manipulate. And when people get away with absenteeism, it really ticks off other people. And the reason why is because that person doesn't show up. Here's a scenario. You've got a person who's technical, and they don't show up to work, and they're pretty consistently not showing up to work. And once again, they don't show up. It's Monday, 7 a.m. Everybody's getting scheduled onto their particular equipment or jobs or whatever. This person doesn't show up. Hey, Joe, you need to come over. You need to cover for this guy. And then he doesn't like the fact that his job's all of a sudden changing last minute. People like to see consistency on what they're doing. And that constantly happens to be the theme, where this guy always has to cover for this guy. Well, that really ticks people off. And that ticks Joe off. So if you're not dealing with the absenteeism issue, then that's going to show that people can get away with whatever they want. And especially the senior people, the people that you want to keep around, if you're not dealing with those people with absenteeism, you could lose somebody that's really important. I would rather have that person with absenteeism, really technical, amazing, gone, and have some junior person that knows nothing that wants to show up every day and learn. That's more important to me than somebody that shows up 70% of the time. If you want to show up 70% of the time, then go find another job. But that's something that frustrates me and frustrates a lot of other people. Second thing, I talked about the performance of people. So number 3, good employees get frustrated with people that are not held accountable to their underperformance. So if they're never hitting rate, I'll give you another example. So you've got somebody that always talks, and they run, let's say, this CNC machine, or they do this assembly job, and they're always away from the machine, or they're in a completely different department talking to somebody else. Well, they're not producing work, yet they're getting paid the exact same as the other person that's doing their job. That would really upset somebody significantly. So really think about how you would feel if you're building this product for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 4.33 days per month, if you want to calculate specifically, 12 months a year, and you've got this other person that they're at their machine, their equipment, their workstation 60% of the time, and the other time they're going to get a coffee, they're going to talk to somebody else, and they're both getting paid $25 an hour, whatever it is, $30 an hour. They're both getting paid the same pay. That's completely unfair. Would you not get upset? So if you're not holding those people accountable, then you're going to lose really good people. And the thing is, typically what happens, unfortunately, is when you go and hold that person accountable, they're going to be really upset that you're the bad guy. But don't take it to heart, because that is very typical. People that underperform and get or have poor attendance, and when I talk attendance, I'm not talking about somebody with a legitimate health issue. I'm talking about people that manipulate the system, and there's lots of them. So you got somebody that's poor attendance, underperforming, whatever, and they're going to think you're the bad guy because you're calling them out for the reality of their issue. So it's really important that you hold underperforming people to what they are. And if they're not performing and they're not going to continue to perform, you need to fire them. Number 4, unfair wage structures. So one thing is raises based on favoritism. I've seen it in past companies where a certain manager gives certain people higher increases, even though they're technical, they've been there for a long time, but they're not actually a higher performer. They just have knowledge and they do their meets requirement job. You got somebody that's going above and beyond, maybe not as knowledgeable, but they're going above and beyond. So their lower rate, they should get a higher increase because they're performing more. Yet you get people that are getting raises based on favoritism. So don't get trapped into that. Be very factual and be fact-based on the raises that you give. All employees talk about raises. I've even given out letters to a full workforce saying, Here's your wage. You shall not talk about your wage. People still talk about wages. It's never going to not happen. So assume that everybody will talk about their wages, and therefore you need to make sure that the increases you're giving are correct, are consistent. Bringing another thing that can cause frustration for your long-term employees is bringing in new employees with higher wages. So there is a reason, there is a purpose, or there is a time when you need to make this happen. So if you're bringing in a new person at a higher rate, that's going to cause issues. But if you're bringing in a new person who has 25 years of experience, so sure, they weren't at your company, but they were at another company doing the exact same thing, and you bring them in at a high rate, that's justifiable. Unfortunately, if that causes somebody within your company an issue and they're at the same skill, I would not ever change that methodology and that hiring method in terms of the wage structure. So unfortunately, that could at times cause issues. Number 5, over-promising, over-committing. So don't promise stuff to people. People like to complain all the time and have expectations. Yes, listen to their complaints, listen to their problems, but you do not, there's nobody holding a gun to your head that you need to commit to anything, you need to promise anything. You can listen to them, but if they're a complainer all the time and they're not really a great performer, they're just a meets requirements person, listen to them. You don't have an expectation to basically commit to or promise anything to them. When you say you're going to do something, make sure that you know that you can actually accomplish it. Don't overcommit. Don't overpromise. Don't commit to just general things with people unless you know you're actually going to accomplish it. You're not required because somebody came in your office venting that you need to do something about that. You know, everybody has to manage their behavior and their frustrations. Just as I do, just as you do. We all have to manage our frustrations. We as managers get frustrated just like an employee gets frustrated. We have managers of our own. We're not going to go to our manager frustrated all the time and venting and everything with expectations. So therefore, if we're not doing that, then with expectations, then why would you allow your employees to have these big commitments and promises because of the way they vented? So stop over promising, stop over committing, because that just creates frustration, you know, with somebody that, you know, that has been here for a long time, and you commit or promise something. Don't do it. You know, try to help them out, but you got to watch what you commit to. Number 6, no opportunity for growth. Yeah, this is a difficult one, and I'm sure you know you might have this at your situation too, where you've got a, you know, perhaps everyone on the shop floor wants to move in engineering or quality or materials planning, and you've got 100 people on the shop floor, and when a position goes open, you've got, you know, if you got 100 people on the shop floor and you got 120 people, I don't know where that 20 extra people, but you've got tons of resumes for that one position. It's difficult for growth. Well, here's some. So let's just wait a minute. So there's some ways to give people some engagement and some growth without creating a new position. So let's say there's different levels within your own organization. You know, let's say you're in a CNC manufacturing company, and you've got a machine operator, you've got a junior setter and a setter and a programmer position. Well, you could start getting some people to cross-train those operators, cross-training with the junior setters, or vice versa, junior setters with setters. You could do some online programming training. There's many different ways that you can provide growth. You know, perhaps if you have different departments, you could say, okay, are you interested in to go work in this other department to do some cross training over there and learn? And you explain to people, You don't have necessarily new roles, but you're helping them. You can even straight out say you're helping them develop their skills, whether it's internally or externally. There's nothing scary about saying that. As a leader, you want to see that person grow, whether it's in your company or outside your company. Obviously, internally is the best, but sometimes when there's a limit of growth and somebody, you know, has substantial skill and they move on, that's great. You should want to see that you're growing people internally because you're gaining that productivity while they're still in your company. So it's very beneficial to look for ways to cross train people, even if there's not growth internally. Um, Number 7, overworking your good employees with constant overtime and or last minute overtime requests. So you watch that those key people are not the sole focus of, it's a Friday at 2 p.m. Everybody's going home, and at 1:58 p.m. you go over to this, the CNC setup tech, and you say, hey, you need to stay for another hour to finish the setup because we need to run it on the weekend. If you're continually doing that, you're going to frustrate those senior people. What you could do is, if you see that that's a constant thing, well, now that's an opportunity to train somebody else who was at a lower position to learn this setup role. And you can explain to that senior person, hey, I don't want to keep, having to call you for last minute to do this type of stuff. This guy's interested. And you could even ask, you'd say, okay, do you like when I ask you last minute? And they say, yeah, great. But quite often they'll say no. So now here's your way in. You say, okay, because you don't like that, and I always hold you accountable to staying around to finish those jobs, I want to help you out. We're going to work on training or cross-training this person with you for 6, 12, 6 months, so that this person can be the one to stick around to do that special setup and not you. Now you might get that senior person on board to help you because they're not interested. They want to go home and enjoy their family or whatever they want to do, their weekend. So that's a way to get in. Lots of different ways to try to minimize your long-term employees leaving. There are so many more situations that I've experienced, and if you want to discuss more, one-to-one, even on a Teams or a Zoom or Google call, just message me or just leave a comment, and we can connect and just go over some scenarios. Perhaps if you're struggling with a certain situation, I can provide some advice, free of charge. Just, I'm always wanting to help others and even learn from others too. I don't have all the advice, and shooting ideas back and forth always helps.